Good evening, folks. I see a lot of people coming in. Welcome. Going to wait 2 more minutes to let people get settled. All right, see a few more people straggling in. We have about 1 more minute and then we'll start up. All right, while y'all get in, my name is Mike Maelli and I am a partner at the Highlander Institute, where we work with schools on school change work through the lens of instructional equity. I'm joined today by a colleague of mine, Christina Corser. Well, let's say hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm also a partner at the Highlander Institute. Happy to be here.
Very good. And Louise, I don't know if you want to say hello. I think everyone probably knows you, but yeah.
Yes, hi. Good evening, everyone. Louise Seitzinger, Assistant Superintendent. We're thrilled to share this draft of the strategic plan with all of you and look forward to your input and feedback.
Thank you. So a little bit about our strategic planning process and how tonight is going to go. We're going to share with you our first draft of the strategic planning process. Now, this process started almost a year ago as we started gathering school voice through the school improvement process. So every school in North Providence has a school improvement team. That team is made up of local stakeholders of building leaders, community members, family members, teachers, and admin. And what they do is they look using the data from the school, come up with a plan for their individual buildings. We then took that data from all of those individual buildings and gathered common themes across the district. We then pulled together a comprehensive plan based on that feedback and voice using our core group of our strategic planning committee. Now we're in our third phase. We've taken all that feedback. We've looked at all the data from across our district. And now we're looking at this data. We've put it into a plan mode. And we've come up with what we think is our attempt over the next 5 years to meet the goals that I will be looking at together as a community tonight. Our goal tonight is that for you all, through the chat, through the Q&A, which Christina will be monitoring, share your thoughts and feedback at different points in the process. Finally, once we have that feedback, we'll then go back to one more time as a strategic planning committee. We'll look at the feedback you gave us, make our final attempt at tweaks. We then will take that, move our draft plan into our final plan and present it to our community and school board. And then once it's approved, we'll then send it to the Department of Ed for a final approval. And then finally, we will implement our plan over the next 5 years. Before I jump into the framework, Louise, is there anything you'd like to add?
I would just like to say thank you to Mike and to Christina for just a comprehensive process. And we really, as Mike said, started with the data and really connected to all the schools, but really looking at our community and how we've evolved over the last several years. So we had a former district strategic plan, but it really did not, I would say, mirror or reflect who we are right now. And we feel that our goals and in terms of our culture and where we are right now, this plan really reflects that. So we're really excited for all of you to see it, hear it, and give us some feedback again. And I just want to thank you, Mike and Christina, for all of your hard work on this.
Awesome, thank you. And we are excited to partner with you on this. Some really great things are happening in North Providence. We're happy to help you in that process. So the strategic planning process. So there's a framework that we're going to talk through that has 5 parts. The first is the vision of the graduate. So that is what is leading our work. Really thinking of what do we want to be true of our students when they leave our district. So we start there looking at the graduate, that 12th grader who's gone through pre-K in some cases all the way through 12th grade. We then think about what does that look like for a middle schooler, then an elementary student, and then a pre-K student. From there, we drafted our mission and vision. What do we want to become true of all of our students? What is the school and district that we want to create for all our North Providence community? From there, we moved into our theory of action. So what's our plan? If we do this, then what's the outcome we want for our students? If that's our vision and that's our mission of how we're doing it, what's the if then process that's going to get us there? Finally, we went back into our values. What are our beliefs? What do we believe is true of all of our students in North Providence? And our last step was, what are our priorities? So if we're saying this is our vision, this is where we're going, our North Star, this is our mission, this is how we're getting there, this is our theory of action, that's our step-by-step process. And if this is what we believe to be true of every student that walks through the doors of our schools, what are our goals that we're going to achieve and how are we going to do that? So we start with that high level goal of the vision of the graduate, and then we work our way down back into the schools. But remembering, I like this image here because it's a circle, right? It started first with the voice of our community members through our school improvement teams that was brought to our strategic planning team. Now we're going to take our thoughts, what we've noticed, and bring it back to our community, gather that voice, and then it's a circle. It's an ongoing process. So even though we're working on this over the next 5 years, we're going to every year be checking in, and sometimes twice a year checking in to make sure we are on the right track to where we want to be 5 years down the road. So let's look at the vision of the graduate. Now, the vision of the graduate work started prior to the work on our strategic plan. It was work that has been led by our high school team, our high school principal, and her core group of stakeholders and leaders. And as a group, they came up with these competencies, these goals of what they want to be true of their students. From there, our middle school team took those vision, those qualities of a graduate and said, okay, if this is what I want to be true of a high schooler, then this is what needs to be true of a middle schooler at the end of our 3 years together. So if they need content knowledge in high school, then they need to first master skills in middle school. Finally, about 2 or 3 months ago, we then brought it to our elementary building leaders. We looked at the vision of the high school graduate. We looked at the vision of the middle school student and came up with the vision of the elementary school student. So if I want my students in high school to have content knowledge, and in middle school, they're mastering those skills, then in elementary school, we need to help our students see how they're making their own personal academic growth. So every column that you're going to look at, and I'm going to stop talking in a minute so you can read these and not hear my voice. Every column you look at, the top block builds on the block that comes before it. Okay, so I'm going to give you a minute to pause and listen and read, and then I will move on to our next piece. So there's a few things I'd like to call out with these, and we'll have time in a little bit for some thoughts from the community once we get through a few more slides. There's a few things to call out. First is that the work in elementary is rooted in curiosity, in kindness, in empathy, and in growth mindset. It's that and growth mindset we're defining as the ability that as I try harder, I get smarter, and that students are able to notice and understand that. From there, we go a little deeper into that in middle school, where we talk about connection, that it's not just being kind and having empathy for each other, but it's the importance of building that connection of student to student, student to teacher, and student to self, and really helping students to know who they are. So by the time they graduate, they're able to communicate who they are to the world and advocate for what they want as a student. We start with accountability and we move into responsibility. That kind of grows similarly across both middle and high school. And the other big piece that's so important and something that we are all thinking about coming out of COVID is this idea of collaboration and teamwork, right? We start by teaching students in the younger grades that when we work as a team, we all succeed, that we work through respect, that we respect others, we respect ideas that are the same as ours, but our ideas that are also different. We know how to work together as a collaborative so that by the time we leave, we are adding to beyond our our high school walls, but becoming collaborative, productive members of North Providence, Rhode Island, and eventually the country and the global world as that global citizenship comes into play. I'm happy to hop on. Louise, anything to add to this one?
No, once again, as you said, I love the fact that they really build upon each other. And one other point I wanted to make is that all of these tenets and these components, as you mentioned, will be built into our curriculum really across the board. So for example, a teamwork and respect is really across the board in every content area, and go and so forth as we go on through middle school and high school. So it's not like this is just a discrete document. It's really about integration and coordination of that effort and becoming part of our philosophy as a district. And as you said, leading with the end in mind. So what do we want that high school graduate to look like by the time they leave? That starts in pre-K.
So from there, we move into our mission, our vision, and our mission. So I'm going to let you read these. I'm not going to read them to you. There's a lot of words. Our mission will look familiar because we took our original mission that we had as a district and tweaked it slightly to match who we are as we enter the next decade, essentially, of the 21st century, right? We're a few decades in now. But also, we know that things have changed since March 13th of 2020. And what do our students and communities really need to come out of that? So our mission is a step-by-step process of how we do that. This is what the day-to-day looks like in our schools, in our classroom. That's on the right. On the left, you'll have the vision. And that vision that's our North Star. That there may be pieces of this that are already true in our district, but we want in 5 years, this is what we want to be true for every student who enters our doors in our schools. Every person that comes into our community, we want them to see and know that these things are true for every student. So that's what we're working towards. The mission's the day-to-day of how we're getting there. Now, like I said, there's definitely pieces that are already there. We have contributing members of society. We have positive structures. We're emphasizing the unique skills of our students, but we want to make sure that we are building a system where every student sees that. So I'll give a moment to pause and read through this. And if you'd like, in our Q&A or in the chat, any word or phrase that jumps out to you, please feel free to share to share that with us by putting it right in the chat or the Q&A, a word or phrase that really jumps out to you or that you really connect with as a community member, parent, teacher, or student here in North Providence. And feel free to throw anything right in the Q&A or into the chat, any word or phrase that jumps out at you. Christine will be monitoring that for us.
I'll read some of them out loud as they come in. Personalized experiences. Thank you for that. Anything else?
I think one thing that always shows out to me as we're waiting for a few more to come in is the idea in our mission that our goal is to educate and prepare our students in a safe, nurturing, and challenging environment for college and career readiness, right? We want our students to feel safe in our classrooms, in our buildings. That's our number one goal. We then, using that safety, are going to nurture an environment that promotes thinking, promotes that growth mindset from the slide before, from our vision of the graduate, right? In the elementary, right? That's important. And finally, because students feel safe, because we're nurturing, we're playing to those personalized goals, we're personalizing the experience of our students, that we're playing to their academic strengths and goals, we then can challenge them in our classrooms so that by the end, starting in kindergarten, we're building a pathway that leads to college or career, wherever it makes the most sense for our students. I'm going to keep moving forward because I don't see a lot coming through right now, but feel free to keep throwing stuff into the question and answer or the chat. So I'm going to move into the theory of action. The theory of action is the process that we're going to take, that if we implement these things in our schools and our classrooms, then our hope is that this is the outcome for our students. So we have kind of 5 if statements. So if we provide blank, then this will happen. So all of these ifs lead to the them. So if this is our implementation, this is our desired outcome. So I'll give you a minute to read, and then I'll talk through some high level thoughts like I've been doing.
And Mike, one thing I want to add, and this connects, I think, right to the then, is something that came up in the Q&A. Something that stood out to a participant is that the schools strive to keep community and individual neighborhood identity. I think that rings true.
Yes, there are many. That was a big part of the process, and a big piece of conversation was we wanted to make sure that we identified the many unique, amazing, different experiences that our students and our families bring into our schools each day. We want that to be a very core driving factor of our school experience. So looking at these implementation, the first piece we want to call out is that we're going to provide every student with a high quality instruction, assessment, and feedback. We want to make sure everything we give our students is of the highest quality. That every student that enters our door is engaged in rigorous and relevant learning experiences. So what they're learning in the classroom they will be able to use when they leave our schools, and eventually when they leave our district at the end of their senior year. Once again, going back to calling out those unique experiences, we know that every student brings with them unique skills and strengths, and our goal as a district is to enhance them. Our next piece is that we are going to prioritize and design multiple opportunities and pathways. So right now, those pathways live at the high school, but the goal is that from kindergarten on, that we're going to see that process happening so that every student's, those skills from before, we're building those pathways with them, for them, so that they can have the best high school experience possible. So they are the most ready when they leave after 4 years in high school and are ready for college or whatever career they go into. And the last piece is that we believe that families are partners in their child's learning, that our community is also a partner in our child's learning, that we are going to work together as a whole, right, to support that whole child as a community that support, so that by the end, every student will reach their highest academic potential and be prepared to be productive, contributing members of a global society. So we're not planning to send our students out for this June. We're thinking about what's that June look like 5 years down the road. And we're thinking about that today so that our students are ready for tomorrow and what comes after. The last piece is value, and then we'll open up for some conversation before we move into priorities. So these are our values. These values currently existed in our old plan. We kind of focused them down to, I believe, I'm not sure what just happened.
11.
11, thank you. That was a number. 11 priorities for our students. So once again, this will all look familiar. I'm just gonna read the big blue, and then every piece is defined. So student-centered learning, personalized instruction, that we're going to play to those students' strengths and needs and help them get to where they need to be in our classrooms. That we're going to engage our student. That's one of our highest beliefs and values. That's our highest priority, that our students are engaged in learning, right? We're going to do that engagement through access to high quality curriculum and instruction, that we're putting the best materials possible in front of our students and making sure that our teachers have the best research-based teaching strategies in their back pocket to help every student succeed at their goals. Kind of calling out from before, we're building on that family partnership, that we know that families are the first teachers of our students, and we're going to work with them to help every child succeed through involvement, engagement, and making sure that our families are part of that student achievement. That student achievement, we're going to make sure we do that by developing appropriate grade level materials, that we're putting them in engaging, supportive, and challenging environments. And we're making sure that everything our children learn has a real world application. Finally, we're going to focus on instructional equity. And that really means that ensuring that every learner has access to resources and opportunities that are both aligned to their needs and support their academic and social emotional success. So by the end, we have that college and career readiness, that no matter what pathway the students go down, they're going to have access to that final big picture. Oh, I feel like I'm skipping over your questions, Christine. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing them.
I'm not sure either, but I think we have, let's go through and just introduce the priorities, and then we can get some of this feedback.
Okay,
before we
perfect.
dive into the specific priorities, because all of this feeds into it. This might feel like we're saying the same things over and over again. And that's a good thing, because we have these 8 priorities, and we have intentionally designed strategies that kind of climb the ladder back up to that vision of the graduate. And everything is connected back to those main tenets. So if this sounds a little redundant, that's okay. And if you got the sneak peek on the next slide, the feedback we're going to be looking for is around what's resonating, around any questions that you still have. So as we get into the planning priorities, this is where we're going to really get into what does this look like? What does this look like with classrooms? What does this look like as parents? I'm stealing your thunder, Mike. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Steal away. That was good. Thank you. I needed a break from my own voice. So we have 4 priorities that we're focusing on. And within each of these priorities, there are strategies that we have looked at through the school improvement plans, as well as the research and data that we were looking at as a district, to come up with what's the best steps that we need to take to help our students reach that vision that we called out a few slides ago. First is learning environment. Students will continue to learn in a safe, equitable, innovative environments. The next is curriculum and instruction. Calling back to before, that students will have access to high quality curriculum materials in pre-K all the way through senior year of high school. These will be aligned to academic standards, aligned to the curriculum framework, and aligned with statewide standardized testing, such as PSAT, SAT, RICAS, and so on. On those assessments, based by having these high quality materials, our hope is that students will demonstrate proficiency within and across curricula by acquiring skills and knowledge that will prepare them to be global citizens in the 21st century, right? So not just doing well on a test, but being ready for what comes after high school. And finally, we know that we can't do this alone, that it takes a village to raise a child, that our success is also your success as parents in the room, or teachers, or building leaders, that we are going to work together to help our students succeed. So families and community members will feel valued, welcomed, informed, and engaged through multiple methods of district, school, and classroom communication and opportunities. So we're going to tell you what's happening in our schools. We're going to create that back and forth with our families and community members, but we're also going to build opportunities to bring in our community members into our schools, into the child's learning, so that we're all working together on that final goal. Louise, I feel like I've talked a lot. I don't know, I haven't given you much of a chance. I'd love to hear any thoughts you're having.
I think that, this really streamlines it. And as Christina said, we're going to get into more of the nitty gritty with the goals and the action plans, et cetera. But someone asked a question about, can we afford this? And so do we have the funding to support achieving all this? So part of that is that, yes, through our general budget, we have to plan for all these things. But the other piece of it is that a lot of this, in terms of curriculum, I can tell you right now, is being afforded through grants that we've received through the federal ESSER funds, which is COVID related funds. So we're really fortunate that we're able to do that. And a lot of the professional learning is also grant funded through Title II, it's called, which is a federal grant that we receive every year. So that's planned for and accounted for through that. So what we try to do is be as strategic as possible and fiscally responsible, of course, to make sure that we are, but again, this is a 5-year plan. So I want people to keep that in mind, as Mike said earlier. So, but just to answer your question, yes, that is part of what we need to do and what we do as a district in terms of planning for these things. But the good news is that a lot of this is already being accomplished in terms of resources, supports, materials, curriculum, and so forth. So I just wanted to say that publicly as well.
Thank you.
Just another comment from, I think that in direct response to Louise's answer is an agreement that this has to be a true partnership, because you can't only achieve this in 6 hours a day. It has to continue at home as well. I think the school year feels very short. It feels like this really quick 9 months, but when we're planning ahead for 5 years, it allows us to make these slow and careful adjustments in the direction of where we're going. So we get to play the slow and steady game. We get to be intentional about collecting data and reflecting. So I appreciate the question about funding and support. The great news is I'm speaking for Louise here. Louise has a careful plan to achieve this. And a lot of what Mike and I do as partners is just help with the focus. It's just help kind of apply blinders to the school day.
And I just want to comment too, for the, in terms of the superintendent and our district leadership team, that is always at the, top of our agenda in terms of being fiscally responsible and prudent. And, we understand that's, and being very transparent about that. So we're very proud of the fact that we've been able to access these funds, federal funds, and then continue to access them through our federal grants every year.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions? This is the time. Christina, do you mind rereading the questions that we want some feedback on?
Sure. So, and there's another question in the chat that I'll raise after I give these 3 buckets. So as we ask for your feedback throughout this presentation, it'll fall in these same 3 buckets. The first is, what questions do you have? And then the other 2 are, what about the information that we're presenting resonates with you? What rings true? So an example of that would be the comment on, yes, this has to be a true partnership because you can't achieve this all in only 6 hours a day. And then the other feedback that we're asking for is, what about this is confusing, or what might we need to clarify? And 2 of the questions in the chat are kind of similar. Will teachers, administrators be trained to foster all of this? And will there be professional development for parents to help them if they are seeking help from the educators?
So short answer is, at the school level, through the school improvement team and through their goals, they're going to be working with parents and teachers. In terms of training, I'm not sure what that person means as far as we're going to follow the district plan, and they will follow their school improvement plans as principals and as teams at the schools because they're going to have individual goals at the school level. But in terms of our district goal, we're going to work with our administrative team to make sure these are being kind of carried out through their school improvement plans, which they are right now because they're all connected. So short answer is yes, we'll be supporting that effort for sure. And a lot of what we're doing right now, like I said earlier, does support these. It really is all aligned and really does connect.
Thank you. I see some other questions coming through, so I don't want to move forward until we're good. All right, I think for time's sake, I'm going to move on to the next few slides, where we get a little deeper into the actual priorities. So for every priority, there's a strategy, right? So, and I'll pause in a minute so another question comes through. So I'll probably go section by section really quick. But so this is our first priority, which is curriculum instruction, which means by the dates listed here, we will already have, right, June 2022, that's right now, or by June 2026, implemented new high quality curriculum, ELA, then math, science, ELA, math, all the way across, right? That's the target. That's the goal. That's what we're working towards, right? If that's our goal, this is our target. And then every one of these has its own strategy that goes with it. So we're going to continuously update our pre-K documents. We're going to create a valid classroom walkthrough tool and formalize the implementation. We're going to increase teachers' knowledge of research-based, culture-responsive teaching practices, best teaching practices. We're going to align our pre-K curriculum to statewide standards and support teachers in that implementation. Our hope is that we're going to come up with a plan for piloting a full-day pre-K program. And then under each of those strategies, there's an action. So that's the strategy. Here's the next step of what we're going to do.
So Mike, a quick question. Mike, I think you partially answered it by applying the timeline to some of these strategies. And the question is, I understand it's a 5-year plan, but how soon do you expect to see successes from this plan? Meaning what current grade should be the best model of this plan?
That's a tough question. I really can't I'm not avoiding the question. I just want to be clear. I don't think I can pinpoint a grade. What I would say is every strategic plan is always a work in progress. So I couldn't say, okay, by grade 5 going to the next 5 years, by the time they're in 10th grade, it's going to look different. I hope so. That's our goal. It should look different. So as every grade currently goes up, once this plan is approved and is vetted, I think that we should see this growth. But as Mike said earlier, we are going to have kind of checkpoints, continuous checkpoints, and then we should be reporting that to the public. And I also wanted to mention that, Mike, we should mention too that the Rhode Island Department of Ed now has a strategic planning almost portal, if you will, that we are going to be using. And every district is going to be responsible for putting in their plans, which we will be doing. And we aligned our document to be really easily vetted into that portal so that when we are done and this is approved and final, we will be putting that and it will be uploaded. And that's going to be a public portal so that everybody can go into your district's plans as parents, as community members, and see what it says. And then there will be checkpoints that we're going to have to report to Rhode Island Department of Ed. So I just wanted to clarify that too. There's a lot of accountability. So I think the important piece here is that we have checkpoints and we communicate that to the public.
In addition to that, this plan will go next to the school level, and then the school will be responsible for helping to meet those benchmarks. So this is the big district bubble. And then once we get your feedback and kind of approval, and this is so helpful, then the schools can begin to take action and take apart that big 5-year goal and say, okay, if this is our 5-year goal, what makes sense for year 1? And then what does that mean for what my teachers need? And what does that need for what my parents need? So a lot of the questions that are coming in are, what does this look like for my student at my specific context? That will be determined by the school and the school teams. And then another question I think connected to this is, how do we measure our success? Do we have metrics besides standardized test scores?
As we get further into plan, we have outlined that. So it's more than just standardized test scores. And I'm glad someone asked that question, because when you look at data, you should always be looking at, we call it triangulation of data, meaning at least 3 data points. So that includes standardized tests. We have local screening assessments that we do with children. We also have classroom performance levels. So there's a lot of different things, that anecdotal information. There's a lot of ways that we assess our students. So it is not just the standardized test. So great question. Thank you.
Yes, and I think one thing we talked about is developing a walkthrough tool so we can look at process of how are teachers implementing the strategies they were learning about in those PDs, and where do they need more support. We also gather that family voice through that survey works data that many of you completed over the last few months, right? That's why it's so important to have that data, because it gives the district the view of like, okay, this is what we think is happening. Is it true also for our teachers, for our students, right? The student voice piece, and for our families, right? So there's a lot of different pieces of data. So those other 2 pieces beyond the academic as well. This 45 minutes is flying by fast. So we have about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to kind of go a little faster into the other ones are very short. So assessment. So once again, this is going to be more test focused because it is assessment, right? That's our goal, is to show growth on our assessments. The goal is that we will see a 15 to 25% growth over the next 5 years. So that'd be 3 to 5% growth each year over those next 5 years on each of the different assessments listed. To do that, we're going to continue to implement and improve on our current district benchmarks. We'll make sure that the data that we are getting from these assessments and from these benchmarks is being used in our classrooms, classroom instruction, and are connected to our curriculum. And making sure that we are continuing to revise and look at and oversee our common task and performance-based assessments in our schools and our classrooms. I can't see anything, so I'm going to keep going forward. The other piece is learning environment. Once again, making sure that we have a safe, equitable learning environment. We're going to continue with the really great work that our district admin has already begun of updating. We have built those 2 new school buildings, they're already built, and continuing to update our current buildings, making sure that all students across the district have access to a safe, inspiring place to learn and play. We're going to maintain regular structural and safety inspections. We're going to ensure appropriate space and flexible scheduling to enhance student learning. And working towards, as a district, establishing an equitable learning environment. So when we think of this piece of learning environment, it's both the physical space in the building, but making sure we have the right seating and materials in those classrooms to help every child learn. And then finally, family engagement. So this is going to go back to that survey works data, is if we want to engage our families through multiple means of communications, giving them opportunities to connect with us as schools. We want to make sure that our schools have 50% or higher participation rate on survey works each year. And I believe many of our schools this year had met that or exceeded that goal. The goal is that every school continues to meet or exceed that 50%. It's really important to have that family voice, that student voice in our school planning process. And that's one mean that we can bring that in. We also want not just families to complete that survey, but we want to see an increase in perception of our engagement. How are families perceiving the engagement in our schools? How are they seeing our communication? And do they feel connected to the North Providence School District and their individual school building?
And just to add, this is a great example of how this goal, this priority might feel a little bit vague, but that's intentionally creating room for the individual school sites to be able to customize this for their local stakeholders, for those neighborhoods that might be different, but mile to mile. And family engagement, family and community engagement will probably look different in the elementary school versus the high school.
Thanks, Christina. And so just 3 strategies to get us there. Frequent, productive, and effective communication between school and home, making sure that we're using all of the resources we have as schools to communicate effectively to our families for using different tools for different levels of information or even urgency, right? Then our next strategy is auditing those engagement strategies, those communication processes, to make sure that we are using them well, but also making sure that we're building opportunities, especially now as we come out of COVID, to convene families and community members in our planning process, bringing them into our school improvement teams, into the different meetings we have throughout the year. We're also going to develop academic and social emotional opportunities for parent involvement, right? So I know that currently there was, I think maybe a few months ago, the district did have some SEL workshops that were social emotional learning workshops that were geared towards families, right? We're going to continue to build on that. The only way we can build on that is by gathering that data in that survey works, as well as the local buildings, the data they're pulling in. So making sure that we are pulling in families into webinars, district meetings, and even some school specific meetings that schools are designing opportunities and work and activities. I know that there's title nights, there's math nights that are happening to help families see what's happening in our building, but also sharing how they can help guide and support their child at home. So we're at the end of our draft. there was a lot of words, a lot of information. I'd love if we can, maybe a few minutes of any thoughts, questions, or wonders, or if you need me to hop back to a slide, I'd be really happy to do that. But any questions or thoughts that are really running through your head now that we went through really high level what we've been working on over the last year?
One of the first things in here is just some love for your presentation. Well done. I also want to encourage folks, don't think any question or comment is too small. This is definitely the place to ask. Chances are if you have a question or a comment, other folks do too. So anything that resonates, anything you'd like clarification on, and anything that you just have general questions around. So one question in the chat is CRT and gender identity included in this strategic plan? And if so, can parents opt out?
Culturally responsive practices are included, across all our curriculum. That's part of high quality curriculum that's vetted through Department of Education and that we're working on. I'm not sure what they mean by opting out. This will be our plan, so I'm not sure what that means. We have a transgender policy that you can view on the district website if you have questions about that.
I also don't want to speak for any school sites. Again, this is the overarching plan for the district going forward. But if there's a need for additional learning, additional family information, I'm sure that will be provided by the schools when we get to that, when we cross that bridge. Another question in the chat is about logistics for this presentation. Where will this be posted to view the entire presentation?
Louise, I could probably answer that. We are going to put it up on the school's YouTube channel and just post a link on the school's website to it.
Thank you, Ro.
We'll have it up sometime late tomorrow morning.
Perfect. Well, we're at 1 minute, so I'm going to thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate the many voices that came in. There's a lot of people coming and going throughout the evening, so I know that it's a Monday, I believe, in June. It feels like 2 days are hard in June, right? What day of the week is it? But it is a Monday in June. It's a beautiful Monday night in June. But you took the time to join us this evening. After dinner or during dinner to learn and hear what's happening in our district, in our community. The success of North Providence is not just on one person, one school, one leader, but it is many hands that when we work as a community, we can achieve many amazing things. The next step in this process is that we're going to look at some of this feedback that we've been getting, look at some feedback that we might get maybe later on as people rewatch the video. And then in about a week or so, we'll meet one more time as a team, make some revisions, and then start working on that final draft that we'll present at the end of the summer to our school committee. I believe probably sometime in August. And then once that's been approved, we'll then present it one more time through some submission to the Department of Ed. I think that we've done some really great work here. I think I need to applaud the work of our district leadership team, the work of our building principals, the work of our school improvement teams, our families, our teachers, and our students in this district for that commitment to really building the best learning environment for every student that enters our community. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you to those who have helped design at many different phases in this process. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I am going to stop our recording.